Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is a very special video because last week on the 25th of February 2021 it was exactly 1 year since I got admitted to hospital in Leeds to receive treatment for my ME. So sort of in honour of that, I thought that I would do a little bit of a Q&A today about the ward and about my admission and everything like that. So before I get into the questions, I just thought that I would just give a little bit of background. So basically there is an inpatient ward at Leeds General Infirmary called the NICPM ward, and I'm pretty sure that it's the only ward in the country, the only inpatient ward in the country that specialises in the treatment of severe ME. I might be wrong in saying that, so don't quote me on that, but it's definitely one of the only ones. So yeah, there's quite a long waiting list and things like that. So I got referred to this ward in June or July of 2019. And you also have to apply for funding to be able to go because it is sort of such a specialist ward and there are only 8 beds, and people do tend to sort of stay on the ward for quite a few months. So yeah, you have to get funding. So I found out that my funding had been approved in the November of 2019, and then at the start of 2020 we found out that where I was on the waiting list, I probably would be getting admitted in August. So yeah, that was quite upsetting because I knew that being able to go to this ward and be admitted to this ward was going to sort of be like my best chance of making some improvement with my symptoms. So I was sort of just quite desperate to go as soon as possible. But then in February we found out that a bed had unexpectedly become available, so I ended up getting admitted the following week. Originally we thought that I would probably be admitted for about 3 months, ended up being just over 5 months, so I got discharged on the 28th of July, and it was a very, very difficult, exhausting, painful 5 months, but also very rewarding 5 months. Yeah, the ward and the staff on the ward and everything were all really, really good, and the treatment that they sort of offer is really great. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and answer some questions. So I asked on my Instagram for people to send in questions, so I'm just going to go through those now. So the first question was, what treatment did you have? So it was mainly physiotherapy, occupational therapy, medication, so like working with the doctors to work out the best medications to help with pain, and also hypersensitivity to light, sound and touch. And I also had a bit of work with a psychologist, just because obviously sort of having a chronic illness and being housebound and bedbound and really unwell, and then sort of going to hospital, which for me is like the other end of the country. So I live in the southwest of England and Leeds is way up north. So yeah, all of that does definitely take quite a toll mentally. So yeah, I worked with the psychologist on that sort of thing. But yeah, it was mainly the physio and the occupational therapy. So sort of the way that they work on the ward is it's very kind of individualised to each person. So for the first 2 weeks of the admission, you don't really start any treatment or anything like that. It's basically just an opportunity to settle into the ward, to get to know all the staff and for them to get to know you, so that they can start to develop a kind of treatment plan. Yeah, they do everything in a very sort of gradual way, but not like graded exercise therapy. So it is sort of about sort of gradually increasing things, but not on like a set scale. It's not like 1 week you do this, then the next week you have to increase. It's more of, very individualized. So for example, with sitting up, it started off just starting to put the bed at 45 degrees rather than flat, and just sort of sitting with that for a while, and then once I was comfortable with that, then raising the bed up a little bit more, and then trying to sit out in just like a comfy armchair for a couple of minutes, and then once I was comfortable with that, gradually increasing it a little bit, and if I struggled with the increase, then I would go back down a little bit, and that sort of applied to all the areas of the rehabilitation. So with working on my mobility, and everything really was very, and even sort of working on my sensitivity to light. It was a very sort of gradual thing. It started off, we would open the blinds in my room just ever so slightly, just for like an hour in the evening, and then just gradually increase the length of time they were open for and increase the amount that they were open, but only as I felt able. So their sort of approach to things is really good. What was day to day like? Did you have a set routine? So yes, I did have a set routine. This was something that I developed with the OT. So and it sort of evolved over the course of my admission as I was able to do more. But on the whole, there was very much sort of a set routine. So at first I was waking up every day at 9:45, and then we moved that to 9:30, then 9:15, and then 9 o'clock, which is where it has stayed. So yeah, waking up at that time every day, having breakfast, getting dressed, sort of all the sort of normal stuff, and then lunch was always at 12:30, and tea or dinner or evening meal, we're not going to argue about what that's called, was at 5, and then I would go to bed at about 10. So those were sort of like the most kind of set in stone things. And then sort of in between meals and stuff, I had sort of set times for rest and set times for activities, which included one-to-ones. So if you've ever been in hospital before, then you'll probably know that each day you have a particular nurse or associate practitioner or healthcare assistant sort of allocated to you for that day. So that was the same on this ward. So in those sort of one-to-one times, sometimes it would be time spent with the physio or the OT doing rehabilitation work, or it would just be with whoever was allocated to you for that day, and you could basically do anything in that time. You could just sit and have a chat, or you could play a game. I used to play quite a lot of Uno in my one-to-one times, or sort of once you're a bit further into the admission you were able to do a bit more, you could go down to the activity lounge or do some like crafty stuff. There were a lot of sort of options of what you could do with that one time. And when I was first admitted, that one-to-one time would last sort of around 10-15 minutes, and it would usually just sort of be a little bit of chatting or something, just something relatively low energy. I say relatively because it wasn't really low energy, but it was as low energy as it was going to be at that point. But then sort of once I got to the end of my admission, that time had become about half an hour. Yes, that was a really big part of the sort of daily routine as well. And yeah, sort of putting in those regular times for resting allows the body time to recover from any activity that you have done, and also sort of stops you from overdoing it too much. So yeah, that was sort of what the routine was like. And then yeah, as the admission went on, more sort of things were added into that. For example, doing walking practice, or well, starting off just doing practice standing, then walking a little bit with Zimmer frame, walking a little bit with crutches, stuff like that, and then starting to work on the stairs. That was all then sort of factored into the daily routine. Another question, which sort of ties into that, was how does this differ as an outpatient? Sort of over the course of the admission, as I said, I spent a lot of time working with the OT on creating the daily plan and then gradually changing it. So in the last sort of couple of weeks of my admission, we did work really hard on sort of developing a daily plan for once I was home, because obviously we knew it was going to be different, because at home, like, meal times might be different and there might be sort of different things going on. So yeah, just sort of developing that, so I do still have kind of a bit of a daily plan that I stick to. It's not as sort of like particular as when I was an inpatient, but I still have sort of my regular times for rest, and then like sort of designated time for doing activities and things like that. Did they put support in place for when you were discharged for continuing treatment? So yes, that was another sort of really big part of the admission, was making sure that there was stuff in place for once you were discharged and became an outpatient. So basically every week there was a MDT meeting, which is multidisciplinary team. So it's basically when all of your physios, OTs, doctors and the nurses that sort of particularly work with you would all sort of get together and discuss how things were going and sort of plan what to do next and that sort of thing. And yeah, so a lot of time over the final sort of month of my admission, a lot of that was spent getting stuff put in place for once I was discharged. So I got referred to the adult chronic fatigue service at my local hospital. So yeah, I have appointments with a physio there. Obviously it's all over the phone at the moment, but yeah, so that's a really great thing that they did, was they did make sure that there was plenty in place for once I became an outpatient. What were the best and worst parts? So I'm going to start with the best parts. So the first one was starting to see improvement. This was absolutely amazing. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in a minute, but yes, sort of it was really tough at times when you just sort of felt like nothing was really changing, and you can get kind of quite I found that I started to be really hard on myself and just be like, why can I not do any of this? But then once you do start to see that improvement and you can sort of really, I can do this, and it just gives you such a massive boost and makes you realise that there is hope, because you do definitely start to lose hope. So yeah, when you start to see those just little bits of improvement, even if they seem tiny to sort of other people, to me they were like really big things. Like when I could have my bed at 45 degrees for 5 minutes, like to most people that seems like quite a small thing, but for me that was just this huge thing that provided me with so much hope and just so much joy. So yeah, that was a definite best part. Getting to meet the other patients, yeah, sort of getting to meet them and being able to talk to people who understand what you're going through and are going through similar things was just a massive part, and I have definitely made some best friends for life with the other patients. Yeah, that was just absolute amazing part. Now my worst parts. The first one was lockdown. So about, I think around a month, maybe just a little bit less than a month into my admission, was when the first national lockdown got announced. So it was just sort of going from being at home with my parents all the time, then travelling halfway up the country to be admitted to hospital, and then suddenly not being able to have my parents come and visit or anything like that was incredibly difficult. I mean, lockdown was horrible for everyone, and everyone had different things going on, and it was just an awful time for everyone, but that was definitely one of the worst parts for me, was, yeah, sort of suddenly feeling very alone, and yeah, just sort of, yeah, definitely. Another thing was not always feeling heard, particularly initially when they were trying to sort of develop the treatment plan and trying different things out. I would be really struggling and be in a lot of pain, be absolutely exhausted and really struggling doing things, but I was incredibly shy, so I just wasn't good at sort of communicating that struggle with the physios and the other staff and stuff. So that was yeah, a definite sort of really bad part was yeah, just not feeling like my needs or my struggles were being understood. But thankfully, once I sort of did manage to talk to one of the nurses a little bit about that, they started to do a lot of work with me on assertiveness. So yeah, that was a big positive that came from a big negative. And then my final worst part was when things didn't go to plan. So yeah, this was just a massive sort of blow. I mean, I knew going into this that sort of making improvement with Emmy is never going to be like just like a straightforward sort of thing. It's never just going to be like linear. It's always going to be up and down, but I just don't think that I was really prepared for how up and down it can be. So for example, I just started managing to walk with a Zimmer frame, and I was beginning to get stronger with that, and then all of a sudden it was like someone just like flipped a switch and my legs got really shaky again, and they were in a lot of pain, and I was suddenly struggling loads to do that walking. So yeah, we had to sort of take a step back, reevaluate things, and it was just a knock to the confidence, and just also just, yeah, really difficult when you feel like you've been doing really well and then things go wrong. And then the final question is, did it help? If so, how? Yes is the simple answer. So I thought I would use this question to sort of explain a little bit about what my symptoms were like and how my health was when I got admitted versus how it is now. So I did actually make a video which I uploaded the day that I got discharged, and in that I did sort of talk a little bit about what I was like before I went and then what I was like when I got discharged, so I'll link that video. But so I have severe ME, and when I got admitted it was a lot more severe than it is now. I was completely bedbound. I was extremely light and sound sensitive, so I had to have my curtains shut all the time. I was basically just lying in a dark room 24/7, and there was only a very limited number of things that I could do independently. Everything else I needed help from either my mum or carers to do. It was, yeah, I definitely felt like I wasn't really living, I was just sort of existing. And now I do still have severe ME, but I am able to go downstairs, so I'm not bedbound anymore, and I can go out. I go out in my wheelchair. I don't go out like super often. I go out at most once a week, so I'm still sort of housebound for the majority of the time, but yeah, I'm able to do a lot more now than what I could then. I can walk a short distance with crutches, and when I say short distance I mean about like 5 meters with crutches, which is a massive improvement, and there's just a lot more now that I can do independently. There's obviously still a lot of stuff that I can't do, and there's a lot more improvement to be made, but yeah, sort of that admission and being on the ward has helped massively. Yeah. So that was all the questions, but I just wanted to finish this video by just going through some of my highlights from the ward. First one was the first time that I went outside. It was the first time that I'd been outside in over a year, and it was, in my opinion, quite a magical experience. Sort of feeling the wind on my face and being able to hear the birds and see the sky and all that sort of stuff was just absolutely incredible. And I still find it amazing when I go outside. It's something which you do take for granted, but until it's taken away from you, and then all of a sudden it's just like this incredibly amazing thing. Another highlight was when I started to be able to do my own hair, because for so long I didn't have any independence with that. I needed help with washing my hair, brushing my hair, styling it, everything. So when I could start to do some of that stuff independently, and sort of start to try out different styles and stuff, was amazing. And then the final one, which I've already talked about quite a bit, is meeting the other patients and making friends with them. So that was everything that I wanted to talk about in this video. If you do have any other questions, then do let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I will see you all again very soon with another video.